ever gone through a profound spiritual awakening after a shock, a breakdown, or a moment of deep insight, and then suddenly felt empty? At first, it might have felt powerful, like you had just broken free from an illusion, like the fog of life had finally lifted. You saw everything clearly, the patterns, the noise, the endless chasing. And then, after the awakening, came silence. Not a radiant peace, but a cold, aching stillness. Everything seemed to pause, no passion, no drive. Not a reckless giving up, but a kind of existential letting go, as if your soul had exhaled a long sigh. You stopped, you no longer ran. And in that silence, the questions began to echo. Why do I feel so empty after seeing the truth? This is a strange paradox many face. Awakening doesn't fill you with energy as is expected. Instead, it makes you feel hollow. But that's not a sign you're off track. It's the first doorway into a deeper journey, the journey back to yourself, stripped of illusion. I remember a conversation with a friend, deeply intelligent, sensitive, and spiritually curious. She devoured books by Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. Then, after an inner crisis, a dark night of the soul, she experienced a powerful awakening. She said she saw through every illusion: ego, identity, material success painted by society. She felt relieved, as if she had finally escaped the invisible cage she'd lived in for years. But 2 months later, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and said, "I used to cry because I hadn't done enough. Now, I don't care to do anything at all. I thought awakening would set me on fire. Why do I feel so cold?" That story echoes what Carl Jung, father of analytical psychology, once said: "Enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning of a psychological death. The death of the you thought you were. All the structures that once gave life meaning, goals, careers, relationships, begin to crumble. And here's the key. The ego hasn't disappeared. It's just lost. It lost its map. And when the old map is gone, you can't keep moving as you once did. Motivation fades, not because you're lazy, but because the old fuel is gone. You no longer wake up with a to-do list. You don't chase achievement, not because you're broken, but because you're transforming. You haven't lost your drive. You're clearing space for a deeper, truer kind of drive to emerge. And here's what many people misunderstand. This feeling you're experiencing isn't failure. It's not clinical depression. It's not ordinary confusion. It's something ancient and sacred. Carl Jung, who understood the soul deeply, warned that modern society tries to avoid this phase. He called it the sacred pause, a moment between two worlds. You are no longer the old ego, but not yet fully living from the self. He saw this as essential for individuation, the process of becoming the most whole, authentic version of yourself. But have you noticed? No one talks about this phase. There's no viral post, no bite-sized Instagram quote, because it isn't glamorous. It's not like meditating in Bali or journaling deep insights. It's like sitting alone in silence, unable to explain what you feel, while the world rushes past. Carl Jung would tell you, you are not lost. You're in the middle of the process. You've stepped out of the ego, but haven't yet learned how to live from the self. And this silence, this emptiness, isn't a sign of regression. It's a sacred rite of passage. But because society worships productivity, stillness is labeled laziness. Stopping is mistaken for stagnation. So we begin to judge ourselves. And that judgment blocks the very energy that's trying to return from your soul. Jung had a term for this post-awakening stillness: enantiodromia, the phenomenon where something, when pushed to its extreme, transforms into its opposite. You once lived in the rhythm of action, effort, making it happen. And then, after awakening, the inner pendulum suddenly swung. From doing to stillness, from desire to surrender. You shifted from I must do everything to I don't want to do anything. And that shift is not a mistake. It's a sacred recalibration. In ancient mythology and spiritual traditions, this is the time of the hermit, the death before rebirth. It's the moment when the caterpillar melts into liquid inside the cocoon. No longer a caterpillar, not yet a butterfly, just a vague, formless mess. And yes, messes don't do anything. They have no goal, no identity, no action. That's when the ego panics. It can't handle silence. It wants to keep doing, keep achieving, keep playing a role. But the self is whispering, let go. I am building something deeper. The problem is, many modern spiritual teachings skip this hard phase. They only emphasize follow your joy, keep your vibration high. But Carl Jung was clear: if you avoid the darkness, you miss the gold. Shadow work, facing the repressed, isn't optional, it's essential. This nothingness you're going through is where the subconscious begins to rise. You're not stuck, you're transforming. You're not getting weaker, you're returning to your truth. And then when you stop resisting the emptiness, something strange begins to happen. Motivation returns, but this time it's different. Not loud, not pressured, not the voice of deadlines or expectations, but something ancient, calm, as if your soul quietly whispers, now let's begin again, in a new way. Carl Jung called this the emergence of the self, your true inner being. Not a theory, but a living compass, a felt inner knowing. You've walked through the emptiness, you've listened to the silence, accepted the stillness. Now something new is beginning to stir. Not like fireworks, more like a soft wave, gently urging you to live again, but no longer as a copy of your past. When the self begins to lead, you no longer chase motivation. You respond to life. No longer rushing from fear of being left behind, but choosing from within. Does this resonate with me? Is this real? You don't need a 5-year plan or a vision board full of images. You only need to listen to the subtle inner nudges, dreams, intuitions, moments of awe. Living from the self doesn't mean you'll always feel motivated. You'll still feel tired, confused, even sad. But what you won't feel is the betrayal of yourself. Because now, every step you take comes from inner truth, not outer pressure. So what does living from the true self look like in real life? Sometimes it's simply asking different questions. No longer, what should I do? But what is quietly calling me? No longer, what's my plan? But where is life guiding me? No longer, how do I prove myself? But what feels deeply honest to me? You begin to participate in life instead of trying to control it. You no longer fight to be seen. Instead, you align with yourself. And this doesn't mean abandoning ambition. It means transmuting ambition into devotion, to truth, to presence, to real growth. The paradox is, it's precisely when you stop trying to achieve that you create more value than ever. Because now, your energy isn't leaking into performance. It's focused in authentic expression. You write, you create, you heal, you serve. Not because you should, but because your whole being says yes. This is the new fuel. Not adrenaline, but alignment. Carl Jung called it living symbolically, a soulful life where you believe in dreams, intuition, signs, and meaningful coincidences. Motivation now doesn't come from the outside noise, but from the soul's whisper within. And then life is no longer a race. It becomes a journey, with depth, with guidance, and with soul. So if you feel like your fire went out after awakening, remember, this is not the end. It's the old fire dying, so a deeper, steadier flame can be lit. The old fire, fueled by expectations, competition, and pressure, has served its purpose. Now, you are entering a deeper phase, where motivation no longer comes from the ego's desire to be seen, but from the self's longing to be true, expressed, and connected. Carl Jung never said this journey would be easy. But if you're here, reading this, maybe you've already begun walking the path. A path not to go back to who you were, but to discover who you truly are for the very first time. Not to reclaim your old drive, but to uncover a completely new kind of drive, nurtured by integration, depth, and meaning. You'll find yourself wanting to write, to create, to heal, to serve. Not because you should, but because your body and soul say in unison, yes, this is it. This is not a return. This is a rebirth. And if this journey leaves you confused, lonely, or lost, please remember, you are not off track. You are simply becoming who you are, more deeply, more truly, and more soulfully than ever before.